Does anybody have an issue with me recording this meeting?
All right, come on in. Do you know what the colonel, Jason? There's food in this room. I'm gonna go ahead and get started just in the interest of time, but feel free. Anybody who would like to get up, get more food, get another drink, whatever you need. I just wanted to start off by welcoming everybody. I know almost everyone in the room, but I'm Kim Wheeler, the Executive Director here at SEDA Council of Governments. It's a pleasure to have you all here for this extended lunch period, and to have you around the table to have this conversation today. I thank you for those of you who are traveling near and far, but just to come over here and engage with us on this conversation. So for me, I just wanted to thank you for being interested to learn more about the SEDA-COG Region's Brownfield program and the resources available to help turn properties back into productive and use and regenerate healthy tax base and a community. Really, that's what we're here to talk about today. SEDA-COG, just for those of you who are not completely up to speed, is an 11-county community and economic development organization that has been assisting municipalities and businesses for over 50 years at this point. Our mission specifically is to seek to enhance growth opportunities in an environmentally sensitive manner while retaining the region's predominantly rural character. It fits very nicely in with this program. What's wrapped up in that statement is the fact that growth really also means prosperity. Growth doesn't always need to mean more people, more businesses, more. It really is about prosperity. And prosperity means that a community's economy and well-being is strong, it's healthy, it's constantly striving to improve, and that the community is proud and pleased with who they are and where they're headed, right? So all reasons to be talking about this program here today. And this cannot happen without the community leaders and its residents talking together about these things and planning for how they're going to achieve and leverage their assets to make that happen. So SEDA-COG has really had a lot of tools in its here at SEDA-COG in its box and its community programs to help communities achieve those goals over the years. And we have a lot of programs embedded in our 4 divisions, as we call them, which is for communities, residences, businesses, and transportation. So we have a lot of different kinds of services, a lot of tools in those toolboxes. However, we're always trying to keep our eyes peeled for program offerings that can further enhance the resources that can be brought to the region. Working with EPA and their Brownfields program over the last several years has really amounted to some significant opportunities to advance remediation projects and or abandoned or contaminated properties, and also leverage funds to advance those redevelopment projects. Right now, we are currently seeing the potential fruits of EPA Brownfields funds that we've been working with over the last few years to advance projects that will improve business opportunities, community prosperity, and affordable housing options, all in a number of projects, and particularly one project that we're working on that kind of meets all of those goals, which is pretty exciting. And when we do this in a poor community, and particularly a downtown location with existing infrastructure, and helping to improve the viability of private investments and the opportunity of private investment to come in, we all win. So that is a lot of the reason we think this program is a tremendous asset to bring to all 11 counties. Yes, there are more pockets in some parts of our region than others. We have not seen a full-on Brownfields program like this in these 11 counties for as long as I've been around, 21 years or so in this region. I did work in Lycoming County for many years, and we had a Brownfields program up there, similarly with EPA funds. And they still offer that and pieces of that, but the rest of our region really hasn't had these resources focused in this way before. So we're excited to be able to tap into these funds and be that facilitator. So really, this program is truly exciting to see it unfold. I'm grateful that we can support and facilitate it here at SEDA-COG, as it is a natural extension of many of the program offerings that help to provide, more of and it will help to provide more of a comprehensive approach to community and economic development work. So thank you for everyone to be here today to listen. Thank you for Betsy Kramer and the Montrose team. I'll leave it to you to maybe introduce if you're going to do that. But Betsy Kramer is our lead on the project, the initiative, and thank you so much for all your hard work in bringing us together today. Yeah, so I'll turn it over to Betsy.
All right.
Thanks.
Yeah, but they're sure candidates. Thank you. I'm gonna move my food out of the way. And notes here. So first of all, as Kim shared, thank you all for taking time out of your day to come here today for your lunch. Compliments of Bull Run Tap House from Lewisburg for our food. Very appreciative of that. Also the Montrose team, Anna and Lydia are here. You will be hearing from them later. But right now, I just wanted to kind of give an overview of why we're here, why I'm here, and how I selected all of you to be here. You were all handpicked to be here, quite frankly. I did not advertise this event, nor did I ask for anybody to share it, because I really wanted those who are in the room to be able to get the first chance to get this opportunity, quite frankly. We have EPA funding available for you and for your communities, which is really exciting because they're not terribly easy funds to get, I'll say. And so the fact that we've already applied for them for you, it's a win-win. So how did I get here? So first of all, it all started with smoking. What happened is back in 2019, I was already here at SEDA-COG for the previous 2 years. Prior to that, I had my own business for 12 years, which thoroughly enjoyed. But I came here in 2019 working in economic development, and we had a grant funding through DCED called Engage, where we would go into businesses and assess how could the Commonwealth help you. We noticed a particular need in the city of Shamokin, and many of you are in the room are very familiar with Shamokin and its needs. However, what we did is we thought we need to provide more assistance to this community. As an act, it, at the time was an Act 47 financially distressed community. So we had come up with a kind of a how can we help them funding package, what we were thinking of. And our first stop was we stopped in at a representative at the time, Kurt Mosser, who shared our concerns. And he said, I will get you the funding to put Betsy in the city and to serve as a full-time revitalization coordinator at the time to bring SEDA-COG services to the city of Shamokin. So I started there in the fall of 2019. And around the same time, our DEP folks were in the room too. So back here in this corner, these are our DEP friends. So they have something called a 128A Small Communities for Disadvantaged Communities Technical Assistance Grant. Oftentimes people say, why do I want technical assistance? I'm not going to get any money for it. Yes, you will, and I'll tell you how. Because that technical assistance grant, actually, I'm gonna hold on that thought. Even though it started when I started in the Shamokin area, I'm gonna hold that thought. So when I went to the city, we also engaged with the consultant to create the Go Shamokin Revitalization Plan. And in that plan, now keep in mind, my initial goal was to drive the SEDA-COG services to the city of Shamokin. That was my role, Julie, the cruise director of SEDA-COG to Shamokin. Well, one of the key initiatives from the Go Shamokin plan was they need EPA Brownfield money in the worst way. Well, I said, that's great, but nobody at SEDA-COG does EPA Brownfield. So I had to first get permission to learn, okay, because quite frankly, I was of the opinion that brownfields were just old factory sites or abandoned grounds that once had a factory. So it didn't necessarily have to just be land, but it would be like an old factory. I have since learned that, and I'm not going to guarantee this, but I would assume that in every community, we've got brownfields. It can be anything real or perceived to have environmental contaminants that is keeping it from being developed. So what I like to say is if you have a property in your community and it's abandoned and it doesn't necessarily have to be abandoned, I guess, but if you have a problem property in your community and you can't get it developed, and you're assuming that there is some kind of environmental contaminant, that is a brownfield, and we can help you with that. So that's why it's so exciting that you're here today. Because first of all, show of hands, does anybody think they have a brownfield in their community? Welcome. Okay, so now we're gonna jump to, we have the Go Schmokin plan. Once again, at the very same time, my friend over here, John Gross, had us hooked up with this 128A technical assistance grant that, keep in mind, I did not understand one iota about how it was assisting the city at the same time. They hire a consultant, a statewide consultant called AECOM, and they came in really to do the work. I was merely the facilitator for DEP, the city of Shamokin, and AECOM. I just tried to keep everybody in line and learning a whole heck of a lot at the same time. So during this brownfield assessment, this building right here, this is really exciting. So when the folks at AECOM came in, we didn't even know who owned this building. We had no idea. They definitely did this building, like this is a brownfield. They also found 35 other properties within the city limits that were brownfields. Here's a look inside the building. That used to be a post office. That is not our current post office, but that used to be the Shamokin post office. And then it was many iterations after that until there was people living in there. We found bassinets in there. Like, it was really sad when we got in there. This is going to be one of these brownfield success stories down the road. This is a really great story. So this is what the building could look like in the future. This is done with EPA money, reuse planning. So I'll wait on that, share more about that. So once again, we're working on a strategic plan for the city of Shamokin. We're working with EPA or DEP, EPA funded, for this technical assistance grant or a tag. And all of a sudden now I have this report, thanks to AECOM, thanks to DEP, with 36 different identified brownfields in the community. So then I was able to take that and then apply for, SEDA-COG applied on behalf of the city of Shamokin for what's called a community-wide assessment grant. So I don't want to talk too much about that because I'm going to be talking later on about how we have a new one that can help you. But first of all, just I want to share why do we care about brownfields in our communities? First of all, these buildings, these are all other Shamokin brownfield buildings that we have touched with these brownfield funds. Every property that we have touched with EPA funding, something's happening with, which is so exciting. And it's just showing there's a bunch of different projects. These were all touched with EPA funding and with, quite frankly, the DEP original support. So that, first of all, you care about it because that when there is dead properties in your community, it makes your community seem dead. There's also potential contaminants in those buildings, those properties. So we want to clean up the environment, but then we're also trying to increase the tax base too. We want to see these things get redeveloped and good things happening. So I'm not going to talk too much more about the initial brownfield projects because that's going to really be talking more when we talk about how I can share it with you. But the key lessons that we learned, I'm going to back up again. So once again, I was in the city of Shamokin from 2019. It was supposed to be a 3-year project under Representative then Kurt Mosser, but maybe there for 3 years. All you can do in 3 years is make a big mess because you get all these projects and then you can't possibly say, see ya. So we asked the Commonwealth, who was sponsoring me for 3 years, can we extend it 1 more year? Not asking for any more money, just extend my time there for 4 years. That's so for 4. So that brought us to 2023. Well, then I had a lot more funding coming in and I thought I can't in good conscience say, here you go, here's all your grants, see ya. We recognized a tremendous need for the city of Shamokin to have a downtown manager to kind of serve as that next step. So we worked with the Appalachian Regional Commission and also DCD at the time was under Act 47. They have funds available that way. So we were able to hire Justin Bainbridge down here, City of Shamokin's downtown manager. And so I oversee his position for the next 3 years in a step down approach. But and I will step down off my soapbox soon. But the communities that need this help the most don't have the ability to apply for these funds. And if they can apply for the funds, they don't have the ability to administer the funds. And that's where SEDA-COG can come in, quite frankly, because we can step in, we can get these big grants, and we can help administer the grants. EPA, these are hard grants to get, and they're even harder to properly administer. And that's also why we hire really good consultants, because I am not a chemist, nor do I ever plan to be a chemist. So Montrose Environmental's here, so you will oftentimes hear me say, Anna, Lydia, Anna, Lydia. So Anna's here and Lydia's here. So they will be sharing a little bit more about specifically the revolving loan fund that we do have here at SEDA-COG currently. So you could apply for a loan today. Right down here, we have Doug Wilburn. He is our Director of Business Finance. So he is your guy. He's your go-to guy if you potentially have a project that fits in the scope that Anna Lydia will be sharing. So back here, I want to also share that the key lessons that I learned in those first few years in Shamokin is the value of legislative and community partnership. The biggest thing with these grants is you have to have community input. We are doing this for your community. You want their input in everything we do. These are federal dollars that we're using. So that's a big thing. How important it is to have these site assessments and roadmaps, what to do. So when you, once again, I'll delve far more into it in the next, when I talk more about our new assessment grant. When we're doing these assessment grants for these properties, it's not necessarily just what's its current state. We can also do reuse planning of what could it be. And beyond that, we can do a whole resource roadmap of, okay, this is what it is. This is what it used to be. This is what it is. We can then say, this is what it could be, have actual plans of what it could be. And this is the list of funding sources that you need to do in order to get to that. And that is all funded by EPA with no cost to either a public or a private entity. This is huge, huge. Okay, so I probably will, at this point, turn it over to the RLF point. But before I do, does anybody have any questions on my initial, which I will get far more into the assessment grants, but do you have any questions on the initial presentation? Yes.
Betsy, can you just speak a little bit to the owner, the pathway and communication with the owner of the site or property?
Absolutely, that's a very good point. Okay, so remember initially where I showed you that old post office, we didn't even know who owned it. Took a little bit of research and we found out who owned the property. So what happens is you have to first connect with the property owner because they do have to allow EPA, what they consider EPA, into their building, but it's a different arm. It's not the regulatory arm. It's a different arm. Nobody's going to tattle on them about what's going on. And we try to tell property owners, you're going to need this assessment anyways. If you want to go for any kind of loan, if you're going to want to have any kind of state or federal, you're going to need to know what's going on in your property. So we actually bring the consultant in when we have these property meetings. So it's not just me, it's also the expert in the room. And we have had zero issues. All the property owners that we've had have been delighted to allow for somebody to help determine what is the issues at their property. So did I cover exactly what you were asking? That's important to note. Thank you so much. Yeah, it just doesn't appear. We had, now with us, especially I'm talking about Shamokin right now. We'll discuss the bigger one later. For Shamokin, when we did the Go Shamokin plan, because we did it at the same time that our DEP folks were in there with AECOM, we already had a pathway of, okay, we're going to identify some of those key places. And when I say key, we were looking for what is the properties in our community that will be the most impactful if we develop them. So we, even though we did have that community component to get community input, we knew when we applied for our community-wide assessment grant, what properties we were looking at. And truly that was why. We were looking at which one, if we redevelop, will cause the best for the bang for the buck, quite frankly. And the fact that every property that we've touched if something's going on, that's huge. Any other questions before we move on to the revolving loan fund? I do want to add though, really quickly, So back in, trying to think of what year it was, probably 2021, I went to my first, Brownfield, annual conference, training conference in Oklahoma City. And I sat there and I sat through a revolving loan fund session, which was, whew. Anyways, I thought to myself, we need one of these. Because what I was recognizing is we're doing a great job at identifying brownfields, and I know we have, if just a little tiny city of Shamokin has 36 within a 1 square mile, less than a 1 square mile, imagine how many brownfields we have in our region. And I also knew nobody was going to be tackling these so much. There was kind of the donut hole effect with the state of Pennsylvania where nobody's really helping these people. So I came back from that conference, said to Kim, I want a revolving loan fund. So then I talked to Doug, and we already have a business finance department here who already has a local loan review committee. He has loan officers. He has it all together. I'm like, can I get you more money and can we designate it just for remediating brownfields? And he said, absolutely. So we applied for those funds, and thank you, EPA. They couldn't be here today, but you can pass that along. But we were successful with that. So we're thrilled. So once again, so it's called a QEP for your consultant for environmental qualified environmental professional, QEP. So I put out a request for proposals for our QEP. Montrose won that, and they've been fabulous. So they're the smart people in the room for me, so I can sell it and they just make sure I am correct in what I'm saying. And they can attest to, I'm not a chemist, but they are. So I'll turn it over to you all and then I'll talk more about coalition grants, or sorry, assessment grants later. So thank you very much. Of course. Excuse me. Excuse me, Anna.
Good afternoon. So my name is Lydia Work. I'm a principal chemist, as Betsy alluded to,
I'm not.
and I'm also director of operations at our Valley Forge, Pennsylvania office. I hate to admit it, but I've been doing environmental work for probably 30 years. So this is my colleague Anna. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, Anna Leisher. I'm with Montrose, and I've been working in brownfields for 12 years. And my background's in landscape architecture, environmental design, and education. So I like doing engagements like this.
Yeah, it's a powerful
Yeah.
team when you've got the nerd and the planner, right, working together. So that's what you see up here. I'm not going to read the legal definition of what a brownfield is, but I want you to each take a moment and pause and think about that problem property. I mean, you were invited here today, you're here today because you've got either you already have a property in mind, or maybe today we'll have you have an aha moment and you'll realize maybe you do have a property that we can work with. So I really want to be sure that, like Betsy said, brownfield is a problem property, and it's not just an abandoned industrial site. Here is an example of what was more or less an abandoned industrial site. Go ahead, keep going. And these are some of the images you've already seen from Shamokin, right? A former bar. Who would have thought? Well, maybe that bar was a dry cleaner in the 1940s, right? We don't know. Even a former church. What's great about brownfields now, things like asbestos, lead-based paint, you can get funding to help clean up, abate those kind of issues. Former post office we heard about. What community doesn't have an old gas station? Right? Or maybe you knew that corner back in your grandfather's day was the gas station, right? That is brownfield. Former orchard. The farmers were great about putting down pesticides, right? And herbicides, depending on what their need was. You know, World War II era, lead, arsenate. Sometimes for me as a professional, the most contaminated properties have been the surprising ones, like farms. Oh, golf courses, same thing, right? Want to keep those bugs down, right? Don't want those weeds. They apply chemicals, but you wouldn't necessarily think, I could get funding to help clean up a golf course. Anything else? I just wanted to pause and say, throw them at me. Do you have a problem property like mine scarred land? you know, in this area, you have a lot of mine scarred land that would qualify as brownfield. Yes,
What are the qualifying contaminants? Because we all have the lead, asbestos, mold, but. Does that-
petroleum, anything petroleum.
Uh-huh.
Even coal, you know, if it's concentrated enough, we'll have elevated concentrations of, I won't get into the chemistry, Josh, but
You can contact me after, Josh, for the detailed chemistry part of it.
yeah. And I wanted to say too, Ed and I are gonna stay after if you want to approach us individually and talk about any individual property. You know, I mentioned dry cleaners, automotive repair, right, paint.
So for the purposes of where my brain's gonna go for the next hour, does asbestos, mold, lead qualify for cleanup?
Asbestos and lead, yes,
Okay.
and oftentimes, you know, they go hand in hand with mold, because usually it's water intrusion, right, is the issue, and
Okay.
the brownfield abatement can potentially help deal with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've been doing sadly, we're doing a lot of churches lately, assessment, and also saw, we call them bad buildings, right? Doing a lot of asbestos, hazardous materials, buildings. I'm gonna turn it over to Hannah. We're gonna talk a little bit more about the funding, the money. Yep, right?
And thanks, Lydia. And so Betsy gave an overview much earlier about the past and the work that she's done up until now. One of the main purposes of this meeting is to talk about the revolving loan fund, which I'll be talking through this guide that everyone has in front of you. And then Betsy has additional exciting news that we'll get to at the end about the program that she's continuing to run. So there are all sorts of resources to help you. So just sort of talking through this, which a lot of the structure of the RLF program is based upon the funding, the requirements of the funding agency, the EPA. But the funds are administered by SEDA-COG. And so eligible borrowers need to own the site, or sometimes there are special conditions that a controller, someone who is occupying the site and has control of the site, can apply. And the RLF is designed for the active cleanup process. So the planning and the assessment work would have already taken place by this point, and you're working to fill a gap to address the actual contamination, the remediation that needs to occur. So as eligible borrowers, you can't be responsible for the contamination. And that could be, a public entity will look at how long you've owned the property. Did you properly conduct all appropriate inquiry? We can explain what that means and help to ensure that has been satisfied. And then there's a process for passing a credit check and being eligible to receive funding. So the uses for the RLF funds, those, it's got to be within the 11 county SEDA-COG region. It can cover cleanup construction costs, which means removal. It can be encapsulation or capping to eliminate any exposure pathways of contamination. And then in some cases, it can be for institutional controls by limiting the use of a property long-term. It can be used for site monitoring costs, and it gets into a little bit of nuance of when it gets into the monitoring costs, because there are certain types of monitoring that are not eligible. And then it can assist with your PADEP land recycling program or Act 2 program fees, and the administrative costs that are related to the things that I mentioned there.
And can I interject just
Yeah, of
one
course.
thing? What's great too about the program is it's very, I think, creative and flexible with the funding. So for example, let's say you have a problem property and it's soil contamination. You can get this funding to put the parking lot in. That parking lot then becomes your cap for the soil. John, you'll correct me if I go off too far, right? So I'm just letting you know that you can work with your consultant, your contractor, and come up with some really great plans to almost have EPA funding clean it up, but also help redevelop the property.
So ineligible costs, we covered this a little bit, but the soft costs on the front end, your assessment, your data collection, anything that's not related to site cleanup, job training costs, penalties or fines, and then there's some other things that are a little bit common sense that the program is not eligible for funding. And then, to abide by the state and federal regulations, the cleanup would, need to abide by the Davis-Bacon Act and prevailing wage, Build America, Buy America. So, you would need to show that you're trying to, purchase American built and made. And then there are maybe goals that you want to try to achieve. As well as a compliance with SEDA-COG as a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and there's some fine print in there that we want to make sure that it's acknowledged. So for what's covered in the guide, does anybody have any clarifying questions related to your project or what we presented here that anybody has?
So even though it's a loan, you're mandated to pay prevailing wage for work that falls underneath the funding provided by the loan.
Yes.
What's your maximum and minimum loans? What's your rates?
That would be the gentleman behind you.
The rate,
Term.
yeah. I mean, the rates are, we're looking for it more under 3%. The payback, we've gone over what the payback period is.
No, it's up to you. I mean, it's
Yeah.
flexible.
It's gonna depend on the project, the amount, things of that nature, and what was here, well, no,
Minimum max.
and minimum was,
Yeah,
we didn't
that's
have a minimum of max. We probably, with the amount of money we have, wouldn't try to go over 250, give or take, depending. But all those terms are, flexible and depending on the project and the scope of the project and things of that nature, it's something we can work with and work towards.
And if I can add to that, so we have the initial revolving loan fund amount. So it's a grant that's provided to us to be able to loan the money out. We are looking to get more funds. This is just the start of it. So while right now we might not be able to offer that much, we are looking to get a lot more. Did you say how much? How much that we have $1 million revolving loan fund out currently, and we're looking to get substantially more.
Yes.
I don't know, this might seem like a silly question, but not to me. Is there any connection to, like, if there's a building on the property, like age of that building, like everything that we're looking at is old, dilapidated. I mean, what if something new burns down or something like that? Is there any connection to age of property or anything
No,
like that?
that example of a property and a building burned down, I would say would qualify to at least, you might want to go through the assessment process first, right? To see what kind of contamination there might be, but yes, it could be eligible.
Thank you.
So that malls, my understanding, old malls,
Yes.
they're eligible. Most of them have had service stations there or whatever
Dry
else.
cleaners.
Right. So
Yes.
Dennis, those would be applicable. No, they've already got that.
Yeah, this is, RLF is a low interest opportunity to help you get that project moving forward.
Also, there's an insert in your handout here that walks through the process.
For the AI, for the revolving loan fund, for somebody who's, do they have the same restrictions as like an assessment grant or a cleanup grant that they would have had to complete the AI prior to acquiring?
Yes.
Okay, so it's the same, okay.
Yeah, and that, that perfect. John's question is that the due diligence process, how
Yeah.
did you or how did the developer acquire the property? Did they do a phase 1 ESA to demonstrate that that contamination was before they got the property?
Yeah.
Before you got the property? One exception, my understanding is if you're a public entity and you did it through eminent domain,
Yeah.
you still qualify. Good question.
Yeah, I think you have to go through a process to prove that, but yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, Anna. Okay, so if you're sitting there like, okay, I think I have a property, now what? So you contact me, and what happens first is I send you out a form, not from SEDA-COG, but from the EPA. And that purpose is the property that you're talking about, is it eligible for this program? I send that form to our friends here at Montrose. They send it to EPA, and EPA is the one who gets back to us whether it is approved. So then, okay, let's say, great, it's approved. It's a good property. Then what happens is we engage our friend down here, Doug Wilburn of SEDA-COG Business Finance Department, because now we have to see, is the applicant, are you looking for the funds, or whoever you're looking for to get those funds, an eligible applicant for this loan? Once again, it's a grant that we have received, so we are going to keep the terms very desirable. I can't tell you exactly what they are. That's something you can work with Doug and his team. We certainly want to get these funds out the door, and we want them returned as soon as possible so we can continue loaning them out to others. We don't want to set up a 40-year revolving loan, term for you. So let's say we send it to Doug. He then reaches out to you, or one of his loan officers reaches out to you to find out, okay, are you an eligible applicant for this project? So he works back and forth with that. And then he has what's called a local loan review committee. So he makes recommendations of your project to this local loan review committee that meets here regularly at SEDA-COG to approve your loan. At the same time, we have a responsibility. Once again, these are federal EPA funds. We want to make sure that the community is involved. So there'll be a community involvement aspect as well. So the local loan review committee approves it. You love the terms. Everything happens. Great. You get the funds. Then our friends here at Montrose, they help to make sure that you do things properly when you're remediating your environmental contaminant. And then also after that, you have an obligation to either join the Act 2, the PADEPs. It is your voluntary cleanup program, or there's certain things such as asbestos doesn't fall into that. So you have to have some kind of plan on how you're going to keep it clean. So that's a requirement of you. We'll help you clean it up, but you got to help it keep it clean. So does anybody have any questions on actually the process of getting a loan? Once again, the very first step, contact me. I'll send you the form, and then EPA does the work. Yes, sir.
I'll direct it at Doug. Doug, do you see a situation where the terms might replicate like a CA, Commonwealth Financing Authority Business in Our Sites program, where it's considered patient money? Or you'd lend out maybe on a yearly basis, you'd accrue interest and allow an interest only payment while the remediation is taking place. And then the developer flips the property, you get your principal back plus any interest accrued. Is that a scenario that
People in this room. So, although we want you to benefit, so don't get me wrong, we want you to benefit. That's why you're here. So next I'm going to talk about, so once again, so I was sitting there in Oklahoma City, I went a revolving loan fund. So then I forget the next conference that I was at.
Detroit, probably. No.
No, we already had ours then. I was at some event and I was like, oh wait, there's a coalition grant now. So this one, our initial grant for the city of Shamokin was $300,000. And when I saw the impact that grant did, of course, I wanted to get more funds for our communities. So what we had to do for a coalition grant, we had to have more than just SEDA-COG. We needed to have leads. So we have Mifflin, Clinton, and Northumberland as our leads for that. However, these funds are for our entire 11 counties. We wrote it that way. So even if you're not one of those leads, we have to certainly make sure that those leads get some funding. I mean, that's how we wrote it. However, I'm just letting you know, if you were not specifically written in there, as long as you are in those 11 counties, which you all are, you can benefit. So how does the assessment grant work? First of all, we have it now, started October 1st. In order to actually kick this off, I need to hire a new QEP, or does anybody remember what that is? Don't answer, don't answer. What's a QEP?
This says qualified environmental professional.
And you get a sticker for the day. Yes, so I need to do a request for proposals for a new qualified environmental professional or our consultant that are Smarty Pants. That can help lead the way, keep me compliant, keep you compliant. So that I'm planning on having out by the end of November. That's my plan, with determining who that QEP will be, probably sometime in December, and then having them in contract by January. So we're looking to kick off this next program by January. I have the funds now. I just don't have my QEP. And once again, I can't do their work. So the funding will support the 11 county SEDA-COG region with a focus on these areas: Shamokin, Lock Haven, Renovo, Borough of Lewistown, Cole Township, Milton, Mount Carmel, and Sunbury. I want to share quickly about why Cole Township, Mount Carmel, and Sunbury. So remember how I shared about that little 128 technical assistance grant? Who needs a technical assistance grant anyways? You need them. These areas here, they got one, thanks to our friends at DEP and AECom, and they're about wrapping up with their work now. So ideally, what will happen is we'll be able to take that initial document, the report, which I think they'll have soon. We can identify some of those key spots, and they don't have to go out and apply for their own coalition or their own assessment grant. I have the funds now. So we'll be able to maybe take a couple of their key places, work on those. We've also just identified some of these other areas just because we know there's concerns in those areas. And then more so, I invited all of you here too, because I know that you have shared concerns. Jason, I know you had said you reached out to us before about particular ones for you, and also Josh. So now once we have the QEP on board, what happens next? I will certainly reach out to all of you. I have your emails to let you know, hey, guess what? We have the funds and we now have the QEP. Give me your properties. We'll start rocking and rolling now. And you can certainly, and I know some of you already noted when we did the registration for this, you've already given me your properties, which is fabulous because I will give those right to our consultant as soon as we hire them. So that's great that I have that now. So what can the assessment grant do? And I alluded to it earlier, but now I'm going to go into more detail. First of all, once we have determined that the property is eligible, once again, we talked about it earlier, the property owner has to have, first of all, didn't make the mess. You can't be the person responsible for the contaminant. But also you need to prove that you've done your due diligence before you got your property. So you might come to me and say, Betsy, I got my property at a tax sale. Well, if you're a public entity, great. If you're a private entity, could be an issue, but we'll still, regardless, reach out to me and we will determine whether your property is eligible or not. You don't have to figure that out. That's why we're here. So you reach out to me, you say, I have this property. We find out if it's eligible. Okay, great, it's eligible. Then we have to get your permission, if you are the property owner, to go onto your property. If you, as a chamber or as a large entity, you're Justin, if you know of a property, so what happens is you engage us, you also let the property owner know, and then we all go in to meet together. So that way the property owner is involved in the process if you don't currently own the property. They have to sign off on the work we're doing. And once again, at that time, we assure them we are not here to tell on you. We are not here to fine you. We are here to help you. That is the main purpose of this. Okay, so now your property is eligible. Then we can do phase one environmental review. A phase one is a paper chase, so that the consultants will either sub-consultants, maybe if they're not going to do that themselves, they'll bring in the environmental experts to come into your property, assess it, do a paper chase to see what was the once the property. They do a really good report of what the history of that building is and the possibility that it might have contaminants. So it might end there. It might be like, you know what, we think there's going to be lead paint, but it really doesn't look like there's a whole lot more, and we can end it here. That's great. That's the end of a phase one. So you'll get a report at the end of phase one, what the contaminants are, but they have no need to test maybe the dirt or the water or there. They don't have to go further to test. Now, let's say they do feel the need. So that's their determinant, not mine, not yours. The consultant's job is to say, I think we need to go deeper. I think we need to start testing. At no point do you or your client or SEDA-COG incur any costs with this. This is all covered under EPA grant. So then they will test. They'll test whatever they have determined during that phase one that needs to be tested. And then they'll come up with a phase three or an actual, like, how do we clean this up? What do we need to do in order to clean this up? If you don't have those things, you're not ready for an RLF. That's important. The RLF can't pay for what I just said. It's not allowed. However, I have another grant that can. So just let me know and we'll set you up first for that assessment grant. As soon as we have that, we'll get you rocking and rolling so we can get you the RLF funds. Okay, so now, we know what's there. We know how we need to clean it up. Then we can also do really cool reuse planning. And that's where I shared earlier, we can take what that building was, what it currently is, and what it could possibly be down the road. And there's awesome reports that they can do. They can do feasibility assessments. They can do kind of market studies, what's in the area, what's needed. They can do pro formas, what you need to generate from that building to keep it operational. And this is all, once again, EPA. We've recently found out, Kim, you can also use it for appraisals. So we are currently working on a project, which is probably another EPA love story, where we took one of the projects from our initial assessment, and we are working on a really cool incubator, co-working housing project. With everything that was done, thank you to DEP and EPA, we were in line beautifully to apply for funds. We are looking at the checklist. We have that, we have that, we have that, we have that. And that was a property that when I first came to the city of Shamokin, which is a horrible eyesore, quite frankly. So what these EPA funds can do is set you up really nicely to develop these projects. Another thing it can do is if you have a property owner who doesn't really want to budge on their property, they just want to hold out because they think that maybe something amazing will happen. This is helpful too, because what happens is when you're doing all this work and this feasibility studies and pro formas, you get a complete budget. Actually, with this property I'm talking about right now, in her mind, she was going to be able to develop it herself, in her mind. When we sat down with the numbers and she saw it was going to be many millions of dollars, she realized, oh, okay, it's bigger than what I thought. So we were able to say, you can take all of this. This is yours. That's another important thing. That's their property when it's done. It is public, quite frankly, it's public money that's funding it. However, it's their property. So they can take all that and then take it to a realtor and put it on the market with some really good documents behind them, setting up a new owner really nicely. So that's another thing that can be done with reuse planning. So I'm going to pause here. Does anybody have any questions? Are your minds thinking like, ooh, I've got buildings. I've got buildings. Good.
Can I
Yes.
reiterate something that you touched on a minute ago about nobody's coming after you for your properties that you got? The DEP, the Act 2 program is a strictly voluntary program. It is a real estate program. We want you to get things from contaminated to cleaned up so that you can sell the property. The only possibility in a phase 2 that somebody would give you some sort of notice of violation or whatever it would be is if you're directly injecting goo into a river or something to the effect that you're affecting some other law. If you're just going in with a phase two, and this is, I hear this a lot from people who say, well, you know, what if we find something? Great, then you've identified it. We don't even know you found it until you enter the Act 2 program, in which case that's the possibility that you're gonna clean it up. So what she said is absolutely true. We're not looking to come after you because you found something on a property. We're looking to help you get it cleaned up. So that's the crew that's sitting here. We're here to kind of guide you through the process. So I just wanted to kind of throw that.
I
in there as well.
appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. Any specific questions or any? Yes, Laura.
Betsy, were all the property owners that you worked with so far local?
So far, all the ones that I worked with have been in Shoshone. So this is brand new, this assessment one. So yeah, this is open for 11 counties. So, but they have to be within the 11 counties. Yes, Justin.
Now that the building's located there, what if the owners from out of state, could they still?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
There, but
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, we've had people that were out of state. The property itself has to be from this 11 counties.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, because we've had property owners that weren't local. Yep, thank you. Sorry about that. Good, thank you. Any other questions? But anything else to cover? We might be done a little bit. Well, I'll let the Montrose people come up again in case there's any other questions. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything important. Doug, did you have anything that you wanted to share? No, that's fine. No, thank you. So really, if you have something, your first person to contact is Juan. So, and I'll help you lead the way.
And for a cheat sheet, there's a website, a landing page on SEDA-COG's website with all sorts of information about everything that we talked about today. So.
You had mentioned about like maybe an owner that wasn't, another compelling argument I've seen lately is as owners age out, they may be concerned about who's inheriting the problem property. And it could be a compelling story, like let us help set up the next generation. Potentially, right? For understanding really what's, because I can tell you professionally, sometimes these properties are not nearly as bad as maybe what people think they are. So that's just something to think about. Another strategy.
I guess real quick on the assessment, to what extent does that include infrastructure? Whether it be feasibility or identifying what the infrastructure is to those properties?
It does not include engineering in the classic sense, like it would not include geotechnical unless the geotechnical drilling could be combined with the environmental investigation. I've had some projects like that, if that's what you're asking. It's not architectural. It's not those kind of services in the assessment.
No, I'm thinking more along the lines of in the say feasibility or market
They
study.
go really in
on this site, okay.
Yeah, I can show you some.
You check like existing
Water
infrastructure,
served.
the existing infrastructure, what's at the, yeah.
And what the cost
Part
would
of the
be.
planning, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all part of the planning. I would
Yes,
say.
yes, sorry, yes.
The limit would be the construction drawing. So this funding will take you to that point, but it will provide a concept for, how a structure could be reused, how infrastructure on the site could be reused. In a lot of cases, we'll do engagement with stakeholders and the public to come up with those visions. And then to make them sort of realistic, in providing performance, like Betsy mentioned.
Actually, I'll run up and get one, so I can show you exactly one that we have. It's amazing what you get from the information and maybe not construction drawings, but real good drawings, laying things out, absolutely.
Yes,
As far as, I'll call it MOU that goes from SEDA-COG, I guess it would be, to the landowner. Is that a boilerplate, lawyer rendered, no deviation type document, or for a more sophisticated owner? If he were to come back and have concerns along the lines of, you're ratting me out kind of thing, is there flexibility? Like, could you put some soft landing language in there, would it allow for that, or are we dealing with boilerplate, here it is, sign it or tough?
Yeah, I would let SEDA-COG answer that. You know what he's asking, like, you look like I just think, and I need space, like you say, tell me I have access to the property, right? And.
Yeah.
But as far as.
But a more
agreement with-
sophisticated owner may want to see some sort of,
There's gonna be
you
no
need to
action.
run it past me
Yeah.
before any, release language, I'll call it, I'm not an attorney.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
that, does it allow for that? And maybe the grant regs don't allow for that kind of thing. You're trying to put them at ease to get their willing and voluntary participation.
correct.
More sophisticated landowners generally are drill downers.
Yeah, no, I understand.
They won't open themselves up in one iota. But the good thing about that is they're usually fairly rich and they probably already solved the problem before you show up. So that's good. But, just a thought.
The data can be foyable, right? We're not gonna stand on the street corner and say, hey, look at this phase 2 report we
Right.
got, right?
Yeah, I mean,
But
you're
it is-
compelled as a officer of the court, wrong term, but point being,
Right.
if you see something that dreaded, the other side of that is the landowner probably will know that and just want to.
But that, I would say, well, more than likely, if they know they've got a problem, they're not
they
gonna come in
it.
no matter what.
It's an environmental professional, just a fellow human being in this community. If we get into a property and it's imminent risk to human health and the
Right.
environment, there's a moral and probably a
Absolutely.
legal obligation,
But
right?
it's, yeah, it's- yeah.
Outside of that. And
But that, I mean, that, like, to get into that, you're talking about like,
It has-
piles of goo
it
that
has-
people are swimming in, it's.
Yeah,
It's not
just
good.
leak it out to the curb, so then
Yeah.
you public use, so.
People probably know it anyway, yeah.
And honestly, depending on your relationship, we could maybe connect them with another developer or another property owner that's gone through the brownfield process, and maybe they could ease their concern or answer some of those questions from that perspective.
We did get a lot of that when we started doing the brownfields inventories for folks. And one of the questions we always got was, well, we don't own that property. And what is that property owner gonna do when we call their site of brownfields? They already know their site's a brownfield. Like if they know, like for generally the case. But with that said, we always try to take precautions into knowing that we're not coming onto your site to do a brownfields inventory. We're just kind of looking at the history of the site to see what was there and the possible concerns. So we never put any like, definitive thing. Now this is a little bit different in that you do have to go on the property, actually dig a little bit, try to figure out what's there. But yeah, it's always iffy. But it's best to just kind of talk through, try if you can.
I want to give Betsy the credit for this. I think you said it last week. Brownfields is no longer a dirty
It's not a
word.
dirty word.
It's not a-
Brownfield is not, yeah, not a dirty word.
And that's true. It's actually an opportunity for funding, quite frankly, right? You stick I hate to say label, but right, you reach a category and then it opens up doors for funding. Otherwise, that property could still sit there another 20, 30 years, right?
And quite frankly, I mean, if it's a brownfield, us calling it a brownfield doesn't change that it's a brownfield.
Yeah.
Really. So if you go to the next EPA conference, we'll be the ones wearing brownfields is not a dirty word shirt. You'll find them on my Etsy store.
My favorite, Betsy, is the EPA love story. That's my favorite.
I know. Well, you know what? When I went to the last conference in Detroit and they had EPA Argyle socks as one of the giveaways or the table full of swag, I was like, these are my people. So I like ran to get my Argyle socks. Really quickly, I want to share, this is all dog air and everything because I'm actually working right now. And I'll pass it around. You can all take a look. So this is one of the projects that we were working on in the city of Shamokin. It was called the Fun Zone Building. So there's pictures in here, and this was all done with the EPA funds.
Assessment funds.
Assessment funds, exactly. Unless you have something like this already, a report at least of what your issue is and how to remediate it. Don't be talking to these people yet. We have to get you assessed and we have to figure out how to clean
Well,
it up.
you can always talk to us.
They can talk, you can talk to them. Just don't ask for money yet. Okay, so once again, this is the property. So they did pictures, they did now this one only needed a phase 1. And here's some of the reuse planning. See, they can draw out how it could look. So we were looking at taking that building, put retail on the bottom and housing on the top. We're taking an interesting spin and making an incubator on the first floor and then potentially partnering with another important entity in our area to have, business support services there. But to be continued. So anyways, here's my plans. I mean, everything's laid out. And this is once again, nobody had to pay for any of this other than EPA. So thank you for that. Here's history of the building. This is part of the packet as well. History of the building. We've got where it was in the street, the Sanborn fire mat,
Fire insurance.
fire insurance maps. Here's historic picture of the building, which is really cool because in our concept for future, we're actually going to bring that back. I don't know why they did what they did to the building, but that. So we have even plans on how to bring the facade back. So once again, we can't take this to a construction company and say, here you go. I mean, but we're a heck of a lot closer because of all of this. And then, so we have that. Then we also had, so one of the, what would be the word? Consultants under our original QEP.
Subconsultant.
Thank you. Sub-consultants for our QEP urban partners, then they took the deep dive. Okay, we know what we want to do with the property. So they did a whole feasibility study. Once again, I'm going to pass this along. Do not take it with you though, because I'm working on a grant that I need all this information on. Here's in color. So you'll see the same drawings, but this is where it gets really helpful. They have the cost of what's going to need to be done, broken down into phases to make it easier to attain, which is super helpful. And then they have the pro forma of over 10 years. This is really helpful, especially when you're going for a grant, which we all do. We get our funds. Something like this sets us up really nicely to develop these properties beyond just cleaning them up. Because this property, we don't really need to clean up. Pass that along to you. Thank you. I'll scoot back over.
Any other questions? Yeah.
There's no encumbrances on if your property benefits from the assessment and there's no encumbrances on you or the property. I mean, you could basically go through the process, get a rendering and then say, I don't want to do this and walk away and there's no.
Correct.
You know,
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Not that you do that, but. Here's.
And to Betsy's credit point, right? We don't want these reports to be on a shelf collecting dust, right? We really want it to create energy and move things forward. That's exciting.
Yes, and we can't fund everybody who comes to us, we can't necessarily fund everything I'm sharing. I'm sharing the Cadillac plan. However, so that's once again why I've invited all of you here to let you know, these are all that we have available to us. So please let us know kind of first come, first serve if you want it.
The planning funds, the assessment and then the planning funds, when it comes to the planning portion of that, are we free to choose our team or is it a set team?
You'll have to go with our QEP.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's part of our grant. And I think now you'll have to share a little bit for the remediating. So what if they have their own team that they want to remediate?
I meant more on the architectural and engineering.
Yeah, that would be the QEP
Yes.
team, SEDA-COG team that would do the work
Thanks.
in collaboration with you, of course, and the community.
No, that's for the assessment and planning. For the RLF, that's a loan that you would manage and you would do your own permits.
They just help to make sure you stay compliant. They're
Right.
not actually necessarily doing the work.
So the RLF is funding that's ready to go, right? But that's come to us with a property that you've already done your homework and you're like, yeah, I need asbestos abatement. Yeah, I've got contaminated soil, or yeah, the groundwater is impacted. Things of that nature, right? And we can help you potentially with funding to get it cleaned up, abated. If it's I got this property, it needs, phase 1, step 1, then that's the assessment that Betsy should have ready
January.
first quarter of next year. And then you can hand off the baton, right? You can start with the assessment, phase 1, phase 2, and then hand it off potentially to the RLF or something.
I think I wouldn't mind talking to like whoever did the post office and the slide. And from A to Z, the funding, the project overview, all of that stuff. That's to see how numbers shook out at the end, how successful it was. That would be helpful.
Well, that project's not done yet.
Okay.
So what happened with that project? Speaking to the back of your head, I apologize. I should have said, for that post office building, remember how I said we didn't even know who she was? Through all this process, really kicked off with the tag grant from DEP, we were able to figure out who she was. And then the Economic Development Authority for the city of Shamokin, bought that building from her.
Okay.
So then, because they were a public entity, they were able to get more funds than just a private individual. So they've since received $500,000 through Keystone Communities grant to help shore up the building. So that building is not done yet. So truly, my love story that I'll share to you later on would be this one that I'm passing around, and that's just at the very beginning. We're just courting at this point. So, but I can see my future with it. Yeah. So, but yeah, the funding package, but the interesting thing is, so the funding package, they will give you an idea of how to spend. However, what's happening right now in the state is, I think, unprecedented with the different programs that they're sending out. I mean, constantly we're finding new. So that is not gospel, that's what you have to follow. And that's why always reach out to us as your friends here. We'll always keep you posted on anything new that could potentially be helpful. Yeah, of course. Any other questions while I'm here? All right.
Everybody get a brownie or a cookie?
Yep.
Could be more on the table. If there are no other questions, like I said, we'll be staying for a while. If you want to approach us individually, maybe you don't want to publicly talk about a particular property, we're here. Of course, always after the fact, we can reach out to Betsy. All right. I would say call it, and thank you very much for coming out. Hopefully we can help you. Betsy?
Yeah, no, I don't have anything more to say than thank you for coming and stick around if you'd like, or connect with Betsy. I don't know if you gave a timeline on the RFP for the assessment. Did you say-
I said the end of November, I
End of
plan to
November.
have it out.
We'll go through the selection process in December, so that beginning of the new year, it will be ready to hit the ground running. Right.
And if you have somebody that you know that would potentially be interested in being our QEP, or what does it mean, Josh?
Qualified environmental.
Fashion.
If you know.
That's the hard part.
To me, because when I have that RFP released, it will be released publicly on our SEDA-COG website, but I'll also then send them the RFP copy also. And once again, if you have any questions for Anna or Lydia, they'll be sticking around, and you can always reach out to me as well.
Okay. Thanks.